Welcome back to Storytime with Quefish, reading other people's stories. This is Roomba of Doom, Chapter 3 by GayDemonicDisaster, reading blind. And it took me a while. I saw the email come in last night and I was like, oh my god. But I had to go to bed. So, Chapter 3, Doomba. Bob's viewing habits have inspired him to seek his 15 minutes of fame. Guest appearance by another former Red Dwarf actor. I actually never watched Red Dwarf, believe it or not. All right. The end of another long day at the bookshop, and Aziraphale had returned to the Mayfair flat. He opened the door and let his bag drop to the floor in the hallway with a sigh. He shrugged off his jacket and hung it up in the hall, eased his shoes off, and ambled through to the lounge. He heard a whirring sound and leapt back as Bob trundled by. He was carrying something on his back. It was not a plant this time. The angel stared, wide-eyed. What the... Crowley, he called out, not taking his eyes from the robot vacuum cleaner. The demon popped his head around an open cupboard door in the kitchen where he'd been rummaging for ingredients. Yes, love? Why is Bob wearing a chainsaw, dearest? Crowley nudged the cupboard door shut and plunked a bottle of balsamic vinegar on the counter, then reached for an onion to start chopping. Sorry, love. I forgot to take it off him again. Give me a minute. Aziraphale rolled his eyes. That doesn't quite answer my question, Crowley, he sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose in frustration. Oh. Well, 1, he asked for it. 2, I made him promise to help by threatening the plants with it if I let him play with it. And 3, he wanted to practice. Crowley scraped the chopped onion into a dish and set about chopping some tomatoes. Practice? Oh, no. Crowley nodded. He liked Robot Wars. He asked if he could audition. The angel was incredulous. Crowley, you can't let your child go on that dreadful TV show with a chainsaw. He's just a vacuum cleaner. At this, Bob beeped indignantly and revved the chainsaw in the angel's direction. Aziraphale flinched and hopped onto the couch, carefully lifting his feet off the floor. Although he knew Bob would never hurt them, he also knew he touched a nerve or wire, or whatever it is that the literally damned little device had. Sorry, Bob. I didn't mean it, dear. Anyhow, Crowley, what were you thinking? He'll be annihilated. Crowley grinned devilishly. Not with the upgrades I gave him, he won't. Aziraphale hesitated. I know I'm going to regret asking this, dear, but what upgrades? The demon smirked and lifted his chin toward the Roomba. Hey, Bob, show Uncle Aziraphale the Hellfire mod. He winked at the angel and whispered, Don't worry, it's just regular fire, not actual hellfire. A gout of flame rolled across the floor and left a scorch mark on the opposite wall. Crowley cackled in delight. Aziraphale was aghast. Crowley! The variety of fire doesn't make an awful lot of difference when your electrical appliance runs the risk of burning down the entire building. You're no fun. Besides, now he's also useful as a form of home defense against burglars. It was a few weeks later. The remains of several cheap, mundane robot toys lay scattered around the study. Crowley had moved his desk and throne to one side to leave a big floor space for Bob to practice dismembering them. There were several scorch marks on the walls. Okay, reckon you're ready, buddy. You want to ride in the car? Bob beeped. I can't say that quickly. Bob beeped happily and emitted a small gout of flame like a burp. Crowley shook his head. None of that in the Bentley, though, or you'll be grounded. Behave, okay? Uncle Aziraphale's coming along so he can pretend to man the controls with me, but it's all up to you. Just take it easy with the house robots. Sir Kill-A-Lot and Matilda especially. Don't let them chop bits off you. I've made you immune to fire, but it wouldn't be realistic for you to be completely invulnerable to everything. Just try to take damage on the sacrificial panels I've given you, okay? Bob beeped again, and all his lights flashed red as he pulled an angry face, ready for battle. Crowley grinned and picked him up. Save it for later, bud. I've set up a mobile charging port for you so you can top up in the car on the way. Have a rest. The presenter, Craig Charles, ambled over to Crowley's workbench and took in the RoboVac in gobsmacked amazement. It's a vacuum cleaner, he stated, confused. An armored Roomba, Crowley corrected, with a chainsaw and a flamethrower. Still a Roomba, Craig observed. Doomba, Crowley replied. Doomba? Crowley nodded. Bob the Doomba. He's named after one of the scutters on your old show Red Dwarf, the cleaning droids. Bob had revealed this using the spelling board at Crowley's flat. He used to watch the program at his old house when his owners had it on the TV, so chose it as his own name. Craig chuckled. You know, those little buggers would get signals scrambled by local taxicab radio transmissions, lose control, and start pecking at Chris Berry. The props guys thought it was hilarious. Chris? Not so much. He grinned at the memory. The Scudder's claw hands had been at groin height. Ow! Anyway, he continued, best of luck. I reckon you'll need it. He nipped out of the side door for a cigarette break. Aziraphale took in the rest of the competitors with a growing sense of gloom. You can't really be meaning to let Bob loose at the mercy of all of this lot, Crowley, the angel whispered. Look at the axe on that one. Crowley shrugged. I gave him some titanium panels, some carbon fiber replacing his plastic parts, and a bit of Kevlar to wrap around his other bits. He'll be fine. He wanted to do this, Aziraphale. Who am I to deny him? He patted the vac affectionately. Go get him, Bob. Bob beeped at him and flashed his lights red. Sorry, Doomba. Go get him, Doomba, Crowley corrected himself. Aziraphale had a job keeping his jaw from dropping open and from cringing away from the death-dealing robots on the battle floor. He should probably have practiced plausibly acting as if he was manning the controls rather than just twiddling with the knobs at random as he watched Bob spinning around, dismembering other robots with his chainsaw, and frying their electrics with gouts of fire. His one weakness was being flipped, so Crowley instead used minor demonic miracles here and there to ensure he always landed on his wheels instead, much to the amazement of the crowd. At one point, Matilda bulldozed him over a flame pit, but the plucky little vacuum cleaner laughed it off, lights flashing red, and charged straight back, his own chainsaw meeting Matilda's tail until both of their chains tangled and jammed together. At this point, he used the lock mechanisms to spin around and hold Matilda over the flame pit instead until her wiring melted and she stopped moving. They won, much to everyone's surprise, except possibly Crowley, who had been working hard to ensure his little minion didn't come to any real harm, although he'd never admit it to Bob in case he hurt his feelings. He wanted the Roomba to think he won fair and square, even if he was legitimately outmatched by the carefully built BattleBots. It'd be good for his little ego. He patted the vac affectionately as he placed him on the back seat of the Bentley for the trip home. Aziraphale scattered a few crumbs on the leather seat for him to devour as a reward. For once, Crowley didn't object. Bob beeped happily to himself, his lights glowing a contented blue color the whole ride back to London. Aww. So Bob wanted his 15 minutes of fame on BattleBots. Thank you for joining me for Chapter 3. Chapter 4, if I understand correctly, should be out next Tuesday, or Monday. I don't know what day it is. So, whatever day today is, I guess yesterday.